Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're deep in IGCSE revision right now, trying to get your head around early 20th century Europe, then this is definitely for you.
Yeah, we're going right back to the early 1930s. We're looking at Hitler's very first moves, the first successful steps he took to just completely tear up the Treaty of Versailles.
And these moments, 1935 and 1936, they feel like footnotes sometimes, but they're not. They're actually the foundation for everything that comes later.
Exactly. They gave him the confidence, really. We're going to synthesize what you've learned about the Saar Plebiscite and the remilitarization of the Rhineland to see how he did it. Bluff, speed.
And just exploiting the fact that his opponents were, well, completely paralyzed.
Right. So our mission today is to figure out why he thought he could get away with these huge risks and also, how close he came to total failure.
And maybe the biggest question, why did the big powers, Britain and France, just stand by and watch it happen?
Before we get into it, though, there's one word we absolutely have to understand because it explains so much of the German mindset at the time. The word is Diktat.
A German word, right.
Yeah, and it basically means a harsh punishment, a settlement forced on a country that's been defeated. And for millions of Germans, the Treaty of Versailles was the ultimate diktat.
So it wasn't just politics, it was about restoring national pride, correcting this huge injustice they felt.
Precisely. And that feeling, that grievance, it gave Hitler all the political fuel he needed. So he starts, but not with an invasion.
No, he starts with a smart kind of legal move, doesn't he, in a tiny little place called the Saarland.
The Saar Plebiscite in 1935.
Yeah.
It was genius because he used the rules of the Treaty of Versailles against itself.
Okay, so remind us, what was the Saarland?
It's a small area, but incredibly valuable, packed with coal fields, factories. And after the war, it was taken from Germany and put under League of Nations control for 15 years.
Which let the French run the coal mines, I remember that.
Exactly. So the treaty said after those 15 years are up, the people there get to vote. A plebiscite.
And what were their choices in that vote in January 1935?
They had three. Stay under League control, become part of France, or return to Germany.
And Hitler didn't just sit back and wait for the result.
Oh, no. He poured a huge amount of resources into the campaign. Rallies, posters, propaganda promising a glorious future back with Germany.
And it worked. It worked spectacularly.
It really did. The result was overwhelming. Something like 9 out of every 10 Saarlanders voted to go back to Germany.
Which, for Hitler, was a massive win, not just for his government, but for his whole project.
It was a huge psychological victory. It was his first territorial gain, and he did it without firing a shot. He did it through what looked like a democratic vote. He could turn to the world and say, see, the German people support me.
A perfect low-risk test run for his methods.
Absolutely. And that success gave him the confidence for the next step, which was a lot more risky.
The reoccupation of the Rhineland, March 1936. This one wasn't legal. This was a direct, blatant breach of international law.
A breach of 2 treaties, actually, which is a key point. The first was obviously Versailles, which banned any German military in the Rhineland. But the second one was, in some ways, even more serious.
You mean the Locarno Treaty?
Exactly, from 1925. And why was that one worse?
Well, Versailles was the diktat. It was forced on Germany. Locarno, Germany signed that willingly.
Right. They freely made a promise to respect the borders with France and to keep the Rhineland demilitarized forever. So when Hitler marched his troops in, he wasn't just breaking a treaty that had been imposed on him. He was breaking his country's own promise.
Okay, so the violation was crystal clear, but the timing is interesting. He actually moved the plan forward, didn't he? It was meant for 1937.
Yeah, he accelerated it by a whole year. And there was this, perfect storm of reasons why 1936 was the moment.
He claimed it was because of the new Franco-Soviet pact, didn't he? He sort of twisted their defensive alliance into an act of aggression against Germany.
He did, yes. It was the perfect excuse. He could claim Germany was being encircled and that his move was purely defensive.
But that was just a pretext, really.
Mostly, yeah. The real reasons were probably more about timing and politics at home. For one, he knew France's military would be stronger in 1937.
And there are problems inside Germany itself.
Big economic problems. A foreign policy victory is, the classic way to distract people from trouble at home. He needed a win to boost his popularity.
So he needed a distraction.
And then, the final piece of the puzzle, just pure luck, really, was that France was in the middle of a massive political crisis.
Their government was famously unstable around that time.
Chaotic is putting it mildly. They were lurching from one government to the next. There was an election coming up. No politician was going to risk starting a war right before an election. It was just not going to happen.
So Hitler saw this tiny window of opportunity. France is paralyzed. He needs a win at home.
And he just went for it.
Uh,
But you have to understand, the military risk was just, it was staggering. It was an all-or-nothing bluff.
so when those soldiers marched into the Rhineland, they weren't exactly a conquering army.
Not even close. There were about 32,000 of them. But they had no heavy artillery, almost no air support, and crucially, they had very specific orders if things went wrong.
And this is where the sheer terror of the next 48 hours for Hitler comes in. What were those orders?
The orders were simple and explicit. If the French army moved so much as a single battalion against them, the German forces were to turn around immediately and withdraw.
Not fight back.
No, just run, turn tail and retreat back over the Rhine. They knew, absolutely knew they couldn't win a fight.
Wow. And Hitler himself admitted how scared he was later on.
He did. He called it the most nerve-wracking 48 hours of his life. He said, and this is a direct quote, "If France had then marched into the Rhineland, we would have had to withdraw with our tails between our legs."
He knew he was totally exposed.
Completely. He also admitted they had no real army to speak of. Their air force, he called it ridiculous. It was just a few transport planes from the airline, Lufthansa, painted to look like bombers.
And they didn't even have bombs for them.
Not enough, no. It was pure political theater, a gamble based on the hope that nobody would call his bluff.
So we have to ask the question again. France had the right to act. They had the military power to crush this move. Why on earth did they do nothing?
Well, the political chaos we mentioned was a huge part of it. But also, they were desperate for Britain to back them up. They didn't want to act alone.
And what was the view from London? Were they ready to go to war over the Rhineland?
Not even slightly. The general feeling in Britain was actually quite sympathetic to Germany. The common phrase you heard was that Germany was only going into her own backyard.
So they felt the treaty was a bit unfair on that point anyway.
Many did, yes.
Yeah.
They saw Hitler's action as, reasonable and understandable. And you have to remember the huge fear of another world war.
Right. Anything to avoid that.
And there was another deeper fear. Communism. A lot of British politicians were worried that if they humiliated Hitler and his government collapsed, Germany might go Bolshevik.
So they saw Hitler as a sort of bulwark against the Soviet Union.
A very dangerous one. But yes, better the devil you know, was the thinking for some.
So France is paralyzed, Britain is sympathetic, and Hitler's gamble pays off.
It pays off bigger than he could have ever imagined. And he immediately uses the victory to cement his power at home.
With another plebiscite, another vote, the one on March 29th.
Yes, and this was just pure propaganda. He held a nationwide vote, framing the reoccupation as this great restoration of German honor, and asked the people to approve it.
And the result was, let me guess, pretty high.
Absurdly high. A 99% turnout and a 98.8% yeah vote. A yes. This wasn't a real vote, of course. It was a message to the world. The German people are united behind me.
And that's captured so well in that British cartoon from the time The Goose Step.
Ah, yeah, that's a brilliant piece of commentary. The main image is a goose, obviously representing Germany, and it's doing the military goose step.
Highlighting the aggressive nature of the move.
Exactly. And look what it's stepping on. A piece of paper labeled Locarno. It's literally trampling on the treaty.
And in its mouth, there's a banner. Pax Germanica.
Peace, German style. The sarcasm is just dripping off the page, isn't it? It's saying this is what German peace looks like.
Yeah.
Military force and broken promises.
And the little rhyme that goes with it just adds to that feeling of helplessness.
It does, goosey goosey gander. Whither dost thou wander? Only through the Rhineland, pray excuse my blunder. But it makes this huge world-changing event sound like a minor mistake that everyone's just going to politely ignore.
So if we pull all this together, for anyone revising this topic, the takeaway is really clear. The Rhineland was the moment Hitler learned he could get away with it.
It's the critical lesson. The inaction of France and Britain taught him that they had no political will to stop him. He pushed the boundary and found nothing there. He learned that aggression works.
A lesson he applied again and again. In Austria, in Czechoslovakia.
And then finally, in Poland. This successful bluff, built on such a ridiculously weak military, it really was the foundation for everything.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away. We know for a fact how militarily weak Hitler was in 1936. So if the League of Nations or if Britain and France had acted then in that moment of extreme vulnerability, if they'd called his bluff and forced him to withdraw with his tail between his legs.
How different would the rest of the 1930s have been? Would a wider war have been avoided? It's one of history's biggest what-ifs.